We begin with Georgia's historic elections audit, now uncovering 4 counties that had not properly counted their votes in the original results, the state blaming it on human error. In Floyd and Fayette counties, it amounts to about 2,600 to 2,700 votes each. In Walton, a couple hundred, and in Douglas, about 300. Now, even with these errors, the state says that President-elect Joe Biden's lead over President Donald Trump still amounts to about 13,000 votes. They're also fielding many other complaints that have been largely debunked.
So I had to triage them as they come in because we accept everything on face value that it's a real thing. And then we'd see, is there a way to get to evidence on this? Is there a way we can get people assigned to those? And if they affect more voters, they would essentially move to the top of the list.
That is the Secretary of State's numbers guy, Gabriel Sterling, in a media briefing that began just about 11 this morning. And despite the hiccups they've encountered, the Secretary of State's office says every county is on track to complete the audit before the deadline. That is midnight tonight. Our Tracy Amick Piers in Gwinnett County with an update on where they stand.
Gwinnett is among the counties still working to meet tonight's deadline. They tell us their elections team is working on data entry right now, and they are not sure how long it will take to wrap that up, but they feel confident they will meet the deadline. The Secretary of State's office told us today 112 have found only single-digit discrepancies or any discrepancies at all with the new hand tally and their original reported results. Now, once all the counties turn in their retally numbers, the next step is for the state to certify the results. That deadline is Friday. Under Georgia law, once the results are certified, a candidate has 2 business days to request an official recount. Now, that's if there's less than a half a percentage point separating the candidates. According to the Secretary of State's office, right now, Joe Biden has roughly a 13,000 vote lead over President Donald Trump. Now, that's roughly 0.25%.
Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, meanwhile, continuing to defend Georgia's election process and himself from all of the verbal attacks launched from within his own party. And some of the most pointed have come from Republican Congressman Doug Collins, President Trump's pick to oversee his recount team here in Georgia. During a one-on-one interview with our Jeff Hollinger this morning, Raffensperger had some of his strongest words yet for Collins.
When we had the Senate and we had President Trump, and we had the Congress for those 2 years, Doug Collins, he was the congressman. He had not a single bill on election improvement, election reform. And now he's out here talking, but he never did anything when he was a congressman. And people need to hold him account for that. The truth is staring him in the face, and he just wants to spread misinformation, disinformation. And so if he doesn't want to stand up and really stand on truth, what am I supposed to do about that?
Raffensperger also claims the president damaged his own chances to win Georgia by spreading distrust over mail-in ballots. He says more than 24,000 Republicans who voted absentee in the June primary did not vote at all in November. We'll post more of Jeff's full interview with the Secretary of State on our 11 Alive YouTube page. Accuracy and perspective, that's what our 11 Alive voter access team will continue to bring you through the audit and January Senate runoffs. If you have questions or concerns, be sure to email us at whereatlspeaks@11alive.com or text us at 404-885-7600.